Hey everybody, Steve here. So Arlene and Bella and I took a trip, went out to Colorado. We also took a little trip up to Wyoming. Stopped in Cheyenne, went out to Laramie, so the Wyoming Territorial Prison. This was a prison back in the 1800s. This is not the prison. This is actually the warden's house. So I thought I'd start there to show you the contrast. Here's the prison. They added those wooden walls later because so many people were escaping. This was a really cool tour. I highly recommend it if you're out in Laramie. But here's a little wagon, a lot of good memorabilia there. The prison itself is really good. They have stories and actually about people, some people that kind of overcame their wanton ways and made something of themselves. A couple of real historical folks. But here's kind of the warden's office. I thought it was really interesting that how well the warden did. Their pay was kind of tied to contracts. They got prisoners to work and make things, but they kind of really highlight individuals and what they did, and a lot of pictures that they took when they first got there, and their stories. And they really highlight them. But here's a cell. It's really interesting too that for a lot of these people, it actually was their standard of living improved going to prison. They got baths and they were fed regular, and they had to work, but there were rules that they had to follow. I'll show you those in a second here. There's me doing some hard time. That's kind of the solitary confinement cell. But the prison was heated. There's kind of the channel there that they took some of the bricks off, but the heat would come through to kind of heat it in the wintertime. Obviously, in Wyoming, it gets pretty chilly. It's an old picture of what the prison looked like. Here's the chow hall. There was a dumbwaiter down below that they would send up the food, and they would go in there. But prisoners were silent. They couldn't speak unless spoken to. You can freeze this and take a look at some of the rules. But the idea was that, that people would come in there and be penitent for the crimes they committed, and that's where the word penitentiary comes from. But, some of the more egregious faults, they would put them in the ball and chain there, and they'd have to wear that for a period of time. But like I said, bathing, they were required to bathe fairly regular. It was more often in the summertime, obviously, when it was sweaty. But they were a lot of times cleaner, and their clothes were cleaner than they would be out in the outside of prison for a lot of these guys. But you'd have people that forgers and con men and murderers and everything else in there, all kind of folks. This guy in particular, that's Butch Cassidy. So if you remember Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, he did a spell in the Wyoming Territorial Prison. He didn't care for it too much, but I think they said he worked in the laundry. Unremarkable time there. He did his time and then left and was paroled. It was interesting that there was kind of an impetus to parole these guys because they became kind of a burden, especially if they were about to die. Because if they died in prison, in federal prison, they were required to ship the body home, so they didn't want to do that. So they just, we're gonna parole you. Now they're on their own to, make their way back or whatever they're gonna do. But out back was cool. It's a little frontier town. They brought in some period type buildings that were around back then. Nice little cool little setup there. So I did a little tour walking around. This is the first one's a general store. They got some of these cabinets and shelves and everything from one in Iowa. This is where those came from. But that always reminds me of Olson's Mercantile from Little House on the Prairie. But you kind of get a view of what Laramie looks like in the summertime there. And you can see the winds blowing, of course. Wind blows there all the time. This is a church they brought in from a different part of Wyoming, but this was I think it was an Episcopal church. But this is inside of a typical frontier house. It's fairly comfortable. Doesn't look real well insulated. It probably, because I don't know. I guess maybe the snow would bank up on it and would insulate it. I guess this is kind of what the front of the house looks like, and there's a little garden on the side. That's kind of cool. And you go in, and there was kind of a kitchen area. Um, a nice little bench out front to sit on. A little kitchen area, kind of a common area where you could eat and cook and talk and you know talk about the day, I guess. Um, Looks like that's a little bit insulated. Maybe that's, I'm not sure what that is, if that's canvas or something, but this is fairly comfortable for the time period. But that kind of little peek inside of what frontier life was back then in the late 1800s. It's kind of a two-bedroom house, but yeah, it's comfy, so anyway, this is a nice little peek at what it was like. The prison, I highly recommend it if you go. It makes for a nice couple hours. But hope you enjoyed it, and take care.